Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah. First of all, as somebody who has been lecturing in a university for 40 years, I like my student to smile. It has been a very heavy presentation by Prof. Magad. Being a young man, he likes to go into a lot of details which can be quite heavy for us. Talking about complex problem, just want to share with you, I arrived in Amman airport and I saw my luggage missing. And apparently, after making a report to Royal Jordanian, nothing was done by Royal Jordanian. It's already 3-4 days. And apparently I found that my luggage is in Medina with an Egyptian lady. So how do I solve that problem? That is a complex problem, I see. But alhamdulillah, I've been told that somebody managed to take the luggage from the lady who refused to give it to me until I give her luggage to her. But I didn't get her luggage. So that is the sort of situation that we have in the world today. It's quite interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to speak about Makkah Accord, and then I will follow through with the next presentation on the requirements for IPA and also Makkah Accord to finish off, because these two presentations are connected. Just to put things in proper perspective, to make things clear, between Professor Magad and myself, we have divided our responsibility into two. Professor Magad focused on the academic aspect of the training of engineers. So this is why he talks about Washington Accord, and in the Islamic country, we talk about the Medina Accord. In my case, I'm supposed to focus on what happened to the professional engineer, PE, you call it in the US, and PEng, as is being called in other countries. So I focus on the professional engineers, the second stage in what I describe as the study. Remember yesterday I mentioned about a study done by Sir Monty Finiston in the UK in the 1980s, where he stressed on the importance of training of engineers, not talking up to the degree level only, but to go beyond that, where there is this training for the young engineers to finally become professional engineers. Unfortunately, in many countries of the world, that does not happen. A lot of engineers graduate from universities and pretend to become full engineer without what we call the professional development program for young engineers, and without proper mentoring, and without sitting for the professional exam. They call themselves engineers. That happened a long time ago, but I believe we cannot live with that anymore. This is why there is a lot of stress now on the professional engineers' status. And that was mentioned in the report by Sir Monty Finiston, which stresses on the importance of making sure that young engineers get sufficient practical experience, and especially if you relate to what Professor Magad was saying, for engineers it must be in research and advanced design. It cannot be anything less than that. If you do something less than that, you are effectively falling into the category of engineering technologies, not engineers. Okay, another approach to put things in perspective is, while it is important for us to produce academically strong engineers, it is also important that we provide sufficient training and properly examine the engineers who have gone through their practical training to become professional engineers. And this process is seen at the institutional level, at the university level, can be seen at the national level, and can be seen at the international level. At the institutional level, we're talking about accreditation of programs in the universities. This is why, for example, talking about countries like Saudi Arabia and Jordan here, you're talking about accreditation by ABET or any body that accredits within the country. But when we talk about national effort, we are expecting that the country develop a system within the country that accredit engineering programs. As far as the IEA people are concerned, the International Engineering Alliance is concerned, it is not sufficient to have a body which does academic accreditation only. It must be done by a professional body. And this is why there's a problem in many countries, a problem between those in charge of academic accreditation for all the programs in the country and perhaps the professional bodies who are expecting that they are responsible. And this actually happens in many countries of the world. And alhamdulillah, in Malaysia, we managed to resolve it in such a way that we were able to emphasize in the Act of Parliament, really, that when it comes to professional disciplines, it is the responsibility of the professional body, even if we have what we call the Malaysian Qualification Authority that looks into accreditation of all the program. Now, at the international level, we have a number of movements that looks into all these issues. There is the International Engineering Alliance, which looks after Washington Accord, Sydney Accord, Dublin Accord, and also IPEA for professional engineers, IETA for engineering technologies, and AIET for technician. You have to memorize all these acronyms. That is at international level amongst English-speaking countries like the US, UK, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and so forth. But in Europe, of course, they have the EURES and INE program leading to the Euro Engineer. And in Islamic country, we have the Madinah Accord as well as the Makkah Accord. So that is the perspective that we are looking at. Now, if we look at Makkah Accord now, I will run through. When we started thinking about professional services liberalization in Islamic country, we are very keen to focus on this idea of international benchmarking for the Islamic country to develop our human capital, to be part of the globalization, to be involved in multi and bilateral trade and services agreement, and to promote engineering services in Islamic country as far as possible. Now, we launched a human capacity development initiative in the Federation of Engineering Institutions in Islamic countries some time back. And two things that we wanted to do. One is the Engineering Qualification, Accreditation, and Professional System Project, ECAPS, which has been mentioned a number of times, and which actually leads to the Madinah and Makkah Accord. Madinah for academic and Makkah for the professional level. But at the same time, we agreed to set up the International Engineering Center. You know why? Because we are familiar with the International Engineering Alliance, where Washington Accord, Sydney Accord, and Dublin Accord and other things sits. They are doing that effort to encourage mobility and ensure mutual recognition and so forth. But in the Federation of Engineering Institutions of Islamic country, we want to do better than that. We want to be better than IEA. So in addition to having the ECAPS program, we decided we wanted to have an international engineering center because the world now depends a lot on data, big data, analytics, development of information, development of knowledge. We want the Islamic country to be rich in knowledge, to be ahead of other countries as far as possible. And for this reason, we wanted this International Engineering Center to be able to do studies, to do research. For example, the study that was done by Sir Monty Finiston in 1980, that was good. That was the starting point of a lot of development in the world as a result of just a little study by Sir Monty Finiston, where he published a report, Engineers Our Future, for example. Now, we wanted to do something like that, and I will mention a bit more about this International Engineering Center initiative by our federation. And of course, after the Makkah Accord, we decided, yes, we're going to develop our FEIC Engineers Register, which I'm going to talk about during my second presentation. Medina Accord, roughly, just to recap, accreditation of academic qualification, to put things in proper perspective, international benchmarking for Islamic country, because to us in the federation, yes, you can be involved in international engineering alliance with the Washington Accord and so on, that's very good. But to us, you get your reward in dunya, right? If you're involved in the Federation for Islamic country and help us develop the Medina and Makkah Accord, you got your reward in Jannah, inshallah. So we want both. So for that reason, Malaysia, we are involved in IEA, which will give us dunya, but at the same time, we're involved in the FEIC, the federation, that will give us, inshallah, reward in Jannah. So because of that, we're pushing for this, because basically Malaysia doesn't need all this, because we have gone through the Washington Accord, the Sydney Accord. In fact, we got the Sydney Accord and Dublin Accord with the help of Professor Magad. We got it within 1 or 2 years. That is a fast track. We got it very fast, actually. But we want to help the other Islamic country, because a lot of Islamic countries can't afford to participate in the IEA, because it can be very expensive, I can assure you. So this is why we are pushing for this Medina Accord, which Professor Magad was talking about. And we are now talking seriously about trying to develop the professional experience requirements for the Makkah Accord, the PDP, Professional Development Program, the CPD, the mentoring scheme for young engineers. We want to push for this because a lot of young engineers do not get proper mentoring. A lot of young engineers do not acquire the necessary experience to become professional engineers at the level they require. Remember what Prof. Magad was saying, all these complex problems, things are going to be more and more difficult in the future. And unless we prepare our young engineers for that time when we can be at the level where we can compete with the best in the world, we are going to lose out. Especially, we are now talking about IR 4.0 and so forth. Now, just a brief listing to put us in proper perspective again. Medina Accord, the academic accreditation. Then we talk about professional development, and then we go to Makkah Accord, which is the professional engineer, or PE in the US. That is the professional qualification. The CPD has got to be developed in our countries because people are not taking it too seriously. And finally, we are looking at the FEIC Engineers Register, which I will talk about in a moment. So these are the documents that we have produced. Of course, as Prof. Magad was saying, this is still organic, something that we will keep on developing. In fact, this was first draft, but somehow the Saudi Council of Engineers was so nice that they printed it so very nicely, and it looks like a final draft. The Makkah Accord, professional examination and professional assessment has got to be developed. I use the term professional examination because, for example, for those of you familiar with the American system, they use the written exam to assess the professional engineers. So it's basically a written exam. But there are countries in the world, especially in the UK, in colonial countries like Malaysia, we do assessment In other words, instead of sitting for exam, the candidate will have to submit the drawings, the calculation, the design to be examined, and then of course he will be called for an interview. Now, Makkah Accord, just like IPA, does not prescribe exactly the way we are going to do the examination. It is up to the country. You have to decide yourself what is best for your country. But what remains is the attributes, the qualities of the engineers that we require at the professional level. The international benchmarking for Islamic countries is very important. We are working very hard on this. And we want to make sure that Makkah Accord professional engineers are as good, if not better than IPA. Of course, we want it to be better. And we're working very hard for that so that we have some elements which indicate that we are better than IPA as far as possible. And this is why, as I mentioned, I was stressing on the International Engineering Center to be developed as soon as possible. And of course, the professional engineers' mobility at the international level, we want to look at what is necessary to facilitate the movement of engineers in Islamic countries, because there are barriers, some legal barriers that we have to look into. Quickly, because I don't have much time, these are the sort of things that are being mentioned in the Makkah Accord document. I will not go into details. The governance talks about the academic achievement, and here basically we see the academic achievement for a professional engineer minimum must be Medina Accord or equivalent. And then the professional engineering competence for independent practice. So the stress here is independent practice. He must be able to work independently, prescribe minimum period practical training since graduation, prescribe minimum period in responsible charge of engineering work, and then sufficient knowledge, CPD, ethical practice, and accountability for decisions. Now, that is as far as the professional engineer is concerned. At the same time, we are talking about, just now we are talking about the individual or the institution, and then the next level is the country itself, the signatory. Now, at the signatory level, we have to meet the benchmark competence standard through assessment within their own country, have agreed to be bound by code of practice, willing to be identified in this manner, and meet any cost involved, have additional requirements. Now, the country, so in the case of, for example, Jordan, JEA, Jordanian Engineering Association, may have to develop your own way of doing things, your own way of having your professional exam, but it must meet a certain requirement of the Makkah Accord if you want to be a signatory of the Makkah Accord. And then, of course, there are established rules and procedures to be followed, and you have to attend the annual general meeting as a country or as a representative of your country, and there are responsibilities that you have to fulfill. Now, looking at Makkah Accord in a bit more detail, the benchmark as far as the competence standard, when we talk about academic qualification, we talk about accreditation, and so forth. But when we talk about professional engineer, we talk about competence, competence standard. So essentially, we're talking about academic achievement, again, must be of a certain level. And here, as far as Makkah Accord is concerned, we're not limiting ourselves to benchmarking against Washington Accord. Of course, that is one. We can also benchmark against INE in Europe, or FIAP in Asia Pacific. So it is not necessary to just use Washington Accord. But of course, as far as possible, we want to be better than all this. The second part is the competence.
Professor Abdullah, 2 minutes left.
For the first one or for both?
For both.
For both. I'm not starting in a second. Okay, I will be quickly. And then for the professional engineering competence for independent practice, that's important. Now we are specifying 7 years of practical training instead of 3 years. Normally, it is 3 years, so we are talking about 7 years, and 2 of which must be in responsible charge. Here we talk about the academic qualification a bit more detailed, and these are the list of countries. Initially, we have 5 countries, including Jordan, but Kuwait and Egypt decided they want to be on board, so we have 7 countries now helping us. The CPD, I will skip this, and then the engineers register, we are developing it, and I'm going to talk about it in the next slide. The effort to set up the International Engineering Center so that we can do studies, research, so that we can be rich in knowledge and we can be better than the Washington Accord people and the IPA people. This is what we are proposing, and hopefully we can set this up as soon as possible under the Federation. We have a milestone, and this is summary for the Makkah Accord. I will move quickly to the next presentation, if I may, but that is more towards the requirements for IPA and Makkah Accord. To give
Professor Abdullah, if you wish, we can defer the next presentation after this CAB meeting.
Yeah, I think it's better that I continue. Just
all right, can you just
I will try to finish
within a couple of minutes?
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, time is always a problem. Okay, skip that. Why? It doesn't move now. Yeah, again, the repeat of the slide just to give us the context. This is the benchmark competence for IPA, which I've described a bit. And then I want to bring you to the UK. We go to the UK. Engineering Council actually is setting up their International Professional Engineers, which is part of the IPA actually, and they have done a number of studies, and I would like to draw your attention. In the UK, they have issued this UK spec. UK spec is a very kind of descriptive way of describing what a chartered engineer or a professional engineer is all about in the UK. You can refer to that. And also in the Board of Engineers Malaysia, we have our own definition of the International Professional Engineer, which you can go to find out what we practice. So you can see we also adopt the 7 years. To become a normal professional engineer, all you need is 3 years. But to become an international professional engineer, you need 7 years. There's a difference. And then, of course, there are specific requirements for Makkah Accord. You can read for yourself. You can go to our website or IPA website. It's fairly similar. In fact, we purposely, and we told the IPA people, we are using some of the rules under IPA so that Makkah Accord is similar. So it talks about operation, registration, how assessment is done, and so forth. These are the details which you can read yourself. Mentoring is very important. The last thing I want to mention to finish up, Mr. Chairman, I'm finishing up. We decided to set up this FEIC Engineers Register. So engineers under the Federation of Engineering Institutions Islamic country who qualify to become our international professional engineer will be registered under what we call FAR. We are setting this up, and of course there are some registration fees to it. Malaysian ringgit 500 is 500 real. I think you know that. But we also have registration for life. And then there are registration benefits. You can use the post-nominal FPH after your name. You can get some benefit from being an international engineer under FEIC. And then we have our secretariat. At the moment, I'm chairing that. So, Mr. Chairman, I try my best to speak within the time allocated. So basically, I spoke about Makkah Accord, and I spoke about the requirement for IPA and Makkah Accord, indicating that basically the requirements are similar. There is kind of convergence now. Everybody seems to be talking about 7 years as an example, and everybody seems to be talking about problem-based learning. Everybody seems to be talking about complex problems and so on. I think there's a convergence, but I'm hopeful that under the Islamic country we can do better than all this. And this is why we have the International Engineering Center as our proposal. And I'm hopeful that our effort, inshallah, will get reward in the Jannah, inshallah.
Professor.
Billahi tawfiq wa hidayah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.